Hello everyone, my name is Conor Grevlos and I will be giving my presentation for the final project over BeEF, which stands for Browser Exploitation Framework Project. So BeEF is a penetration testing tool. It focuses primarily on client-side attack vectors via the web browser. It has a well-organized interface and is very simple and intuitive to use. BeEF uses hooks a browser through various different ways, then gives us the ability to launch command modules at the hook target. How does it work? Well, for just a large overview, think of BeEF in two different parts: the user interface and the communication server. The user interface is what provides us, the attacker, with the ability to see online and offline browsers that we have hooked, and then run exploits on those targets or just gather other information that's available, whatever we want to do. The communication server is just what it sounds like. It maintains our connections to the hooked browsers, unless they close the off connections, then therefore it's closed connection. Here we just see a basic example of the most common usage pattern seen with BeEF. But in order to get this zombie right here, we first need to actually hook a browser. So let's get into that. So hooking a browser, it's basically a JavaScript file. It is important that it's essential that they run this JavaScript file. We can do it in many different ways, like we said earlier. We could direct users to the vulnerable site that we maybe embedded this script into. Maybe go as far as forwarding the request to that site so users don't get suspicious. So instead of having it be IP address semicolon 3000/hook, we could forward a domain address, just simple www.whatever.com, to that and call it good. Regardless of how you achieve the hooking, each way must result in the client browser either executing the script seen here or simply executing the URL within the script. So just that http semicolon / so on and so forth. Once we have hooked a web browser, we will see the target IP address within our BeEF interface underneath the hooked browsers. Next to that, we see the three tabs: Getting Started, Logs, and Current Browser. I think Getting Started is pretty obvious, but the Logs tab shows us things like our connections to which browsers and whether or not they were terminated, or whether or not the client reactivated that connection by clicking the link again or whatnot. We see all that there. If we select current browser, we are given many more options, but before we get into all those, we may as well just open up Kali Linux and jump right in. So here we are, just your normal updated Kali Linux environment. First, we're going to want to open up BeEF, obviously, get everything started. You can do that either through here, going into the applications and going to exploitation tools and BeEF framework, or we could just navigate to this file path right here. I like doing this to make sure all the services start up and whatnot. So now here we go. You can see information about the project, which is located on GitHub. There's our RESTful API key. We have our hook URL and our UI URL, as well as HTTP proxy, and we see that the server started. So now we can open up our internet, navigate to that client URL, which is just your IP address, and then semicolon UI panel. So now we just gotta log in. Username and password are both BeEF. So here we are. So here's just that interface I was talking about. We see our online browsers and browsers within that, offline browsers. Here's our getting started. We can get some basic information, see the basic demo page, which we'll be using to actually hook myself right here. We'll use the advanced one though. So this right here is exactly what we need someone to launch. So if we plug this in right there and I press enter, if we reload this, we should see 0.15. There we go. That's my Windows desktop IP address. So now we have successfully hooked myself. So we see this connection right here is based off of this right here. So now we can get into those tabs I was talking about. We see the details, browser language. We can see whatever comes from there. Plugins, which is good before you start launching modules. You want to get a good grasp on what's available to maybe exploit. Session cookies, yes, they're persistent. Yes, there we have session cookies. Just some general detail information. So now we have our logs that are based solely off of this IP address, whereas here we see an overall view of all of these, which these two are my instances of just loading it. So if we go back to logs, we can see browser window has lost focus, but still we remain hooked, so that does not matter. Here you have things like Rider, which you can get into, but we're going to focus on network, which shows us just a map of our hooked browser and possible hosts that it has, but we're not getting too much just because it's not too in-depth of an attack. But the commands is what is the most interesting addition to the ability to get all this other information. So what we can do is, based off our information gathering and any information we have within here, we're going to launch some exploits. So the first one I want to go to is this hook domain, browser hook domain, and then we'll head down to redirect browser. So here, this module will redirect the selected hooked browser to the address specified in the redirect URL input. Pretty simple. So we want to make this person go to, let's just say YouTube. Something as simple as this can be used so many different ways. If you have say I mentioned earlier, a compromised web server, and we have that attack or injected that script in there, there's a good point that if you are getting maybe referrals from AdFly, which I saw as an example, you could then automatically, if you say you send it in a phishing email, you could automatically redirect them to whatever website you receive compensation for and just automatically get that redirect. So the amount of options and uses and opportunities within this alone is pretty cool to just think about. So if we just go back to here, and this one is very interesting as well. So we'll head down to social engineering, and we'll take a look at pretty theft. So this one asks the user for their username and password using a floating div. So dialog type Facebook, you got LinkedIn, Windows, YouTube. This one is also very interesting, so let's just execute it. They make it very easy. Look at this. Right away, Facebook session timed out. Please enter your email, password. That seems yeah, sure, seems obvious to us because we're all in this program, but I think that definitely could get you some could get a user's email and password very easily without them even realizing that it's actually a malicious attempt to get their password. Lastly, let's take a look at let's go back up to the browser, and this one could get its uses are also just limitless. Let's take a look at what our user's doing on his current tab with taking a current screenshot. So here's what we should see. Give it a little bit. And there we go. So as we can see, there's so many more modules that we didn't get into, but basically once you get that browser hooked, and once you get that connection, really the sky's just the limit as far as what you could do, and what you could exploit, and what information you could gather. So of course, as we can see, BeEF is a great tool. It lets you jump right in. It's not too complex, but it's also not too simple. Honestly, it's not just a plug and play. You got to know somewhat what to do, but at the same time, it can provide a plethora of information and opportunities from all these vulnerabilities and modules that they supply. So, all right, thanks.